Good evening y bienvenidos to Chicago Tonight Latino Voices. I'm Alex Hernandez of Noticias Univision Chicago. We cherish every weekday morning at 5 and 6. Thank you for sharing part of your weekend with us. On the show tonight, as we head into the holidays, we'll take a look at the state of Chicago's small businesses. Plus, a local tech startup wants to help fund small Latino-owned businesses for the future. The Archdiocese of Chicago lays out plans for the upcoming Lady of Guadalupe celebration in Des Plaines. Sandra Treviño put some jingle into your jams with her recommendations for new holiday music.
People during the holidays, more than any other time, really return to the familiar.
And the Newberry Consort partners with two Chicago ensembles to bring in the holidays with 17th century Mexican Christmas music. All that coming up. But our first story tonight, how Chicago small businesses are faring as we head into the holiday season. That's right after this.
Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices, is made possible in part by the support of these donors.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas in Chicago's shopping districts, but between supply chain problems, inflation, and the shadow of a pandemic, the outlook for small retail and food businesses continues to be uncertain this holiday season. Joining us now to give us a look at the landscape for Chicago small businesses are Isabel Vélez-Díaz, Director of Economic Recovery with the Chicago Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, Jackson Flores, Secretary of the Pilsen Chamber of Commerce, Mike Moreno Jr., Chairman of the Little Village Chamber of Commerce, and Carolina Juarez, Business District Manager at the Rogers Park Business Alliance. Thank you all for joining us today. But I want to start with you, Isabel. Could you tell us what the picture is like for small businesses as we end the third year of the pandemic?
Sure. So at BACP, we are cautiously optimistic about the business ecosystem right now. We have seen 4,700 new businesses submit get new licenses since the beginning of the pandemic, meaning a lot of businesses during the pandemic, a lot of business owners created their businesses during the pandemic and are now new business owners. We've also seen the license renewal stay at the same percentage as it was pre-pandemic. So we are very hopefully optimistic that things are looking up and things are getting slowly but surely back to normal.
Right, so something positive did come out of the pandemic of these 3 years at least, new business owners.
Yeah, a lot of new business owners that started their business while they were in lockdown.
Right, that's great. Jackson, what would you say is one of the biggest problems for Pilsen business owners?
I think one of the things that we're seeing right now is the cost of rent, utilities, payroll. It's going to continue going up. And we're looking at different types of businesses that are creating different business models that have adapted since the pandemic. I think there's a lot of red tape when it comes to permits, taxes, licensure, and understanding the direct tie between the finances and operations. And that's why grassroots organizations, chambers of commerce are very important and vital to these communities because they take the fear out of asking questions or the words, I don't know.
Right. So our businesses in Pilsen feel comfortable with getting help?
I don't think it's a question of feeling comfortable or familiar enough. It's recognizing where those resources are and where to find answers to the questions that everyone has, right? What bank do I use? How do I get and secure a space? How do I scale my business? These are questions that have echoed throughout the business community even before the pandemic.
Right. Mike, how has the inflation affected small businesses in Little Village?
Inflation has actually drastically changed the way that a lot of businesses are working these days. So as you see the rising costs of products go up, a lot of people are concerned about, what's a necessity these days. So you see a lot of consumers that are kind of holding on to their money a little bit more, maybe buying down. But for us small businesses, the concern is how much higher is the inflation going to go? I mean, we've already seen a massive increase within the last year and a half. And so a lot of us are trying to figure out, engage, and at the same time incentivize consumers to come in.
Right, and financing their businesses might be a problem. Carolina, how difficult is it for businesses to find financing?
It's I think what's most difficult is for businesses to even realize what kind of help they need. A lot of times, the Latino businesses that we work with kind of only work with cash. And so through our entrepreneurial training program, Grow Progresando, we're able to support those businesses and kind of help them along the way, starting from maybe even having a bank account, then maybe a line of credit, and then maybe trying to learn more about their credit score.
Okay. Isabel, also the recovery has been a big issue during the pandemic. How has the city been helping businesses continue their recovery?
Yeah, so right now, during the pandemic, we had a Band-Aid approach where we were distributing funds to help businesses just stay open while everything was closed. Now that things are starting to reopen, we're having a more thoughtful and impactful thought process through the funds we are distributing and how we are distributing that assistance. So right now, for example, we have a storefront activation program to bring in businesses that have never had a storefront before into vacant storefronts, and at the same time, revitalizing commercial corridors. Carolina's organization is actually one of the 17 organizations that are working with us and upgrading 50 spaces that were previously vacant and now host 140 vendors and 50 artists. And I actually recommend visiting all those spaces because it's really great for the small businesses and the communities they're in.
And you're actually trying to motivate people to shop in small businesses in the area as well.
Right, yes. And definitely we are proponents of shopping local and shopping all the small businesses. These activations are all across Chicago, so north, west, and south side. And we are revitalizing commercial corridors and hoping people will shop local and walk through the corridors, which makes them livelier and more safe. Yeah.
Jackson, what do you think the city could be doing differently to help Latino-owned businesses?
Oh, that's a really great question. I think it comes down to breaking down some of the red tape that I mentioned a little bit earlier and making the resources readily and accessible. If you log onto the city's website, is it for anyone to just decipher that type of jargon? I would say absolutely not. And I think this is where grassroots organizations and a lot of these nonprofit organizations step into play because they break down a lot of the red tape. They make it the information accessible. And I think when it comes down to it, the city needs to partner with organizations like those so they can continue having their foot or their ear on the ground.
Right. Mike, how important has being tech savvy been during this pandemic for business owners?
Extremely. I think, and it's really hard with small businesses. A lot of small businesses, don't have the resources or sometimes might not have the understanding of technology, but when it comes to understanding how to use social media as a form of marketing especially has tremendously helped a lot of these small businesses that are out there. There's a lot of small businesses that were trying to incentivize consumers to come in by whether they had deals or, for example, were trying to showcase something unique that other locations might not have. The social media platform and even working on websites and starting online businesses has been tremendous for small businesses out there.
Yeah, definitely, especially during this time. Carolina, could you expand a little bit on the Entrepreneurial Training Center and how you're helping businesses?
Grow Progresando is our entrepreneurial training center. It is free to all Chicagoans. It is a weekly session or a boot camp where businesses or people who are interested in opening a business can come and learn all about how it is, what it means to start a business and what it means to maintain your business and maybe even expand. Things like access to capital, things like marketing, things like site location, things like that is some of the things you learn. And we do have it in English and in Spanish.
Wow. So you could help a business from A to C in the development of their business pretty much.
Exactly.
Okay. That's amazing and definitely helpful for our community and new entrepreneurs. Isabel, what's something aspiring business owners often miss when getting started?
So I think one of the things I would suggest is taking your zoning. So sometimes business owners get really excited about starting a business and they might want to one business owners might want to start a place where there used to be a coffee shop, but that coffee shop might have not followed all of the rules to have a coffee shop in that space. And I think sometimes they sign a lease and they can't actually have their business there. So making sure to go to our website and check all of the licensing, zoning regulations to make sure that all that they want to do, they are able to do. And that's one of the main ones.
Main ones, an
Yeah.
important one.
Yeah.
Definitely. Jackson, why do you think the community should buy and support neighborhood small businesses?
This goes back to consumer consciousness. You move into a neighborhood because the rent is cheap, but then you're taking business to big box stores outside of the neighborhood, and you're forgetting that that dollar goes so much far. It's not just goods and services. It's circulating within the local economy. It's taxes that go back into the community, and it's shaping a community identity. And I think that's, if you're going to move into a neighborhood where, great, you afford the rent, you get a cheap taco, that's fantastic, great for you. But at the same time, this is the fabric of the neighborhood. You need to take care of the neighborhood. It's an ecosystem.
Yeah, great way to put it. Mike, how does your chamber work with the city to help small businesses?
So the Chamber of Commerce, as well as the SSA, has worked really closely with BACP, actually, with, let's say, the NOF grant that was going around. That was extremely beneficial for Little Village in order to get more small businesses, newer ideas, fresh ideas out there, but also making sure that we're trying to have a lot of information from the city of Chicago translated from English to Spanish. There are a lot of people that live in Little Village, roughly 76,000 people. It's the most densely populated neighborhood in the city of Chicago. But not everybody there speaks English. So it's very important that we're getting those resources out there, that we're actually walking the community and reaching out to small businesses that maybe aren't familiar with the resources that are available for them.
Right. And 26th Street, right?
100%.
Yeah, so the second most important business corridor in the city as well. Carolina, could you tell us what role do older people play in making businesses successful?
Rogers Park has been very fortunate to have the administration that we've had. I think it is important that older people stay engaged by, like our older person attend our ribbon cuttings. They visit businesses regularly. They share their social media on their pages. They stay. It's about staying present and making themselves well known.
And helping the entrepreneur, definitely. Well, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. Isabel Vélez Diez, Jackson Flores, Mike Moreno Jr., and Carolina Juarez. Thank you so much. The Chicago-based e-commerce and point-of-sale startup CashDrop is looking to drop some equity cash into the pockets of small businesses. This week, CashDrop founder Ruben Flores Martinez announced he's putting $1 million of his own equity into what he calls the Latino Renaissance Fund, which will be distributed to 1,000 Latino-owned businesses who use the CashDrop platform.
We're a commerce platform, kind of similar to a crossing between a point-of-sale system and an online store. In a nutshell, what I'm doing is I'm pledging $1 million of my personal stock in the company, and we are giving it away to 1,000 Latino-owned businesses that are in the platform. And it's just a way for them to say, look, not only am I a user of this platform and I'm building my dreams and I'm channeling my payments and I'm able to really scale out my company, but now I feel like I'm invested. I feel like I am an owner. I feel like my success is their success. And the Latino Equity Program is meant for every single CashDrop merchant on the platform. We encourage every single person to sign up. They can do it at cashdrop.com/owner. There's a very short form that you put name of your business, some minor details, and then our team is reviewing actively all of the submissions, and then we'll get back to every person that we choose. When we launched, it was right at the beginning of the pandemic. So there was no traffic, and a lot of people that were used to, brick and mortar commerce were forced to pivot really fast. So at the beginning, it was a lot of restaurants and food trucks and hospitality, industry businesses that needed a way to start collecting payments from a remote location, because of COVID. And then it kind of proliferated into a lot of people that just had ideas for small side hustles, or just this idea that like, oh, I'm not working right now, but I've always thought that I could start selling this or that I could provide this service. How do I start selling it or accepting payments for it? So that kind of, created this really interesting ecosystem for us. The hope is that the 1,000 Latino business owners that we give equity to end up being millionaires.
Well, you'll find a link to the application for the Latino Renaissance Fund on our website. Details on an annual celebration for St. Mary up next. Stay with us. Preparations are underway for a large annual religious gathering. The Archdiocese of Chicago this week laid out the plans for the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe celebration in Des Plaines. The Archdiocese says the shrine in Des Plaines hosts the largest gathering honoring Our Lady of Guadalupe in the United States. The annual event celebrates visions of the Virgin Mary seen in Mexico in 1531.
And I think what brings a lot of folks here is we need something to celebrate. And more beautifully, we celebrate together. The feast not only calls the Mexican community together or the Latino community together, the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe and the veneration for this wonderful icon now spreads throughout the world. You can see her image in Africa. You can see her image in cathedrals and shrines and basilicas all over Europe and all over Latin America. She is indeed a wonderful beacon, a motherly expression of those who seek her love, her help, and protection.
The Archdiocese says an estimated 400,000 pilgrims visited the shrine last year. This year's feast will be held December 11th and 12th. For more information on parking and street closures, as well as the schedule of events, you can visit the site solg.org. The Newberry Consort is celebrating the holiday season with an annual concert exploring 17th century Mexican Christmas music. Arts correspondent Angeli Doe introduces us to the featured choir set to take listeners back in time.
Comprised of sounds by two different ensembles, a Mexican Christmas concert hopes to transport listeners back to 17th century Mexico City.
And I thought, well, why not have a convent choir that we might have heard in Mexico City in the 17th century? You'd only hear it kind of over the convent walls, but you could hear it in the streets outside, and people would gather to hear these angelic voices making this beautiful music. But there would also be street bands full of instruments and singers and dancers doing very lively, sort of folky music in the streets. And we wanted to put those two things together, and we thought, why not? Let's just do them in alternation, just like you would have heard if you were standing in that plaza.
Christmas is big in Latin America, and what we are doing is a very interesting combination of contrasting pieces of music that are composed for the same season, right? So from the convent ensemble, you will hear some celestial sounds, what you would associate with liturgical, calm. And then the villancico ensemble provides a really nice contrast with festive music, upbeat. We have voices, instruments, but everything is religious.
With alternating songs in both English and Spanish, the concert features musical numbers derived from Mexican choir books, currently housed at the Newberry Library. With sounds of both old and new Spain, Francie Acosta and her husband Jose Luis Posada say they hope to restore new interest in old traditions.
It's just the large presence of different things at one moment so long ago. Just to give you an example, some of the songs are called negrillas. We basically refer to African people that were living in Mexico at that time, and they mix like Spanish with some dialects that came at that time also with African people. Nobody thinks that Mexican Christmas music actually is going to have in some sort of dialect. So it breaks right there something that people don't even know. It's a combination of early music instruments like Baroque violins, harps, then Baroque guitar, and then also some traditional instruments, percussion like jawbone, like the donkeys, like jawbone, and they're playing it, and drums and things. In this case, we're going to use music from the Puebla Cathedral, from Mexico City, and Oaxaca.
The ensemble directors say they're sure concertgoers will leave familiar with a tune or two, as well as a better understanding of why this fusion of sounds is necessary.
Doing a concert of music that maybe sounds like it might be unfamiliar was a bit of a gamble. But there are two things about that. One is it's not as unfamiliar as people might think. We're surrounded by the sounds of Mexican culture in this country in general, but certainly in Chicago. And so this music will just tick a lot of boxes for people, a lot of memory boxes. I hope they learn what a rich, high art culture existed and still exists in Mexico and South America. I think we hear a lot of popular music. We don't hear a lot of the more classical music. And it's incredibly complex and very, very beautiful and very meaningful.
For Chicago Tonight Latino Voices, I'm Angel Ito.
You can see a Mexican Christmas concert December 9th through the 11th at various locations throughout the city. Visit our website for more information. Up next, song recommendations for your holiday playlist. Christmas is a time for tradition, and that includes the traditional songs many of us love to hear again at this time of year. But if you've heard El Burrito Sabanero a few too many times, music journalist Sandra Treviño has some suggestions for adding a little more jingle to your holiday jams.
Holiday music is especially important in the gatherings and pachangas and fiestas, especially if you grew up in a traditional Latin household. Some of my favorite holiday classics are, of course, El Burrito Sabanero and El Niño del Tambor with a parram pam pam pam, and Feliz Navidad by Jose Feliciano. But we also want to add new stuff because there are so many artists, especially Latin American artists and from South America, that have created holiday music, and they just make a gathering more special and more festive, and we all like to dance, don't we? Nacional Records are an indie record label that specializes in Latin alternative music, música alternativa en español, and they've introduced artists like Carla Morrison, Kinky, and Ana Tijoux. So they put together this compilation of original and covers, and it's called Feliz Nacional, and they just recently debuted a new single by the Argentine jazz duo Cande y Paulo. It's called Feliz Navidad.
Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad, próspero año y felicidad.
We're going to add a little mariachi to the mix, and who better than Lupita Infante? She's been dominating the genre ever since she started with traditional mariachi music. She is the granddaughter of Pedro Infante, who dominated the golden era of cinema in Mexico. So she's carrying that legacy with pride in all that she does. So we're going to hear Llegó la Navidad by Lupita Infante.
Ya sonaron las campanas, ya llegó el niño Dios. La noche ha llegado con todo esplendor.
San Antonio is the place where Patricia Vaughn resides, and she's a native Tejana. She's not only a singer-songwriter, she's also an actress, an activist, and a filmmaker. You may know her brother, Robert Rodriguez, from films like Machete Kills and Desperado, but her sisters are also included and talented like her in her new album, which is called My Favorite Holiday. So if you're into the spiritual side of Christmas, I highly recommend this song that features Ruben Blades. It's called Las Posadas, and this is Patricia Vaughn. I have a lot more, so much more, and I'd like you to listen to it all. It's on a playlist over at enchufate.com/holiday holiday music, and you'll find artists like Gaby Moreno, Sebastián Yatre, and Lucha Lucha, among others. There's a mixture of rock, pop, electronic, synth, new wave, everything that you can find, but it's all holiday music, and I think you'll enjoy it.
You can also find a link to Sandra's complete list on our website. Well, that's going to be our show for this weekend. Be sure to check our website, WTTW.com/news, for the very latest from WTTW News. And also, don't forget to tune in to Primera Hora on Univision Chicago every weekday morning. I'll be waiting for you. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight Latino Voices, I'm Alex Hernandez. Thank you for sharing part of your weekend with us. Buenas noches.
Closed captioning is made possible in part by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, wishing all a happy and healthy holiday season.